Good afternoon. We are ready to paint the Lady Liberty painting. So we're gonna get started. First, I wanted to show you how I tape, like if I use just a piece of paper out of my mixed media pad. I wanted to show you kind of how I tape that onto a board. And this is like a lap easel, but you can use a clipboard because these sheets are small enough. Let me just grab one really quick to show you. I might actually just use this to save some space, but you can use a clipboard to tape it to, but it just kind of helps keep your paper flat while you're painting. So I'm trying to get where I am here. There we go. It just helps keep your painting flat while you're painting, your paper flat while you're painting. So what I tend to do is I use this purple delicate surface tape first because it won't rip your paper. Oops, that's not. It won't rip your paper, and I just kind of leave like about a 1/4 inch border. Around my paper, because this purple tape you can kind of see through it. So, and I just eyeball it. I don't necessarily measure it. It looks like maybe I might be frozen. Let me see. Okay. So that's just what I do is I use this purple tape. Like I said, you can kind of see through it. So I'm just gonna to eyeball like a 1/4 inch border. And then this tape won't hold very well like once it gets wet. So then I go over it with the blue tape. So I'm just gonna show you how I do that quickly. I just come back and line it up with, just so there's some overlap. I do that. And I do that. And I do this on all 4 sides on mine, but you can put this, like, you can put a piece of tape under there too. But anyway, that helps keep your paper flat. And also using the delicate surface, because I've used this blue tape before on mixed media, and it just doesn't, it kind of rips the paper a little bit. So I wouldn't advise using the blue tape directly on your paper. I would use the purple tape, and then, like, just to hold it better, use a strip of the blue tape over the purple tape. So moving on to our painting. So first I use a big brush. Grab my big brush here. This is like almost a 2-inch brush. I think it's 1.5 inches, maybe 15 inches is what it's called, or not 15 inches, that's the length of this, but it's about 1.5 inch brush. And I get some water on my paper for this particular painting. And then we're using this Calypso Blue, Calypso Sky. Again, these are all paint colors that are in your kit. And I just kind of drop a few drips on my paper. I get some more water, and I'm just gonna kind of spread that around. Making kind of a wash, an irregular, it doesn't have to be even. So I just create that wash with this blue. And then we would let this dry. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the next step because I have a dry piece that I did last night, but I wanted to show you this process. But I'm going to go ahead and show you like what we would do next in this painting, just on this wet paper, even though this step you want to let this dry. So I would suggest, like, if you're painting with me right now, do this step and then just watch. Don't keep going unless you have like a hair dryer where you're going to dry it. So then I get a little bit of this silver. This is the silver Artist Loft metallic that's in your kit. And then I want to use another big brush. So I have this 1-inch brush. And what I do is I kind of dip both sides of my brush in here. Like so. And then I'm going to very lightly, I'm just going to go here in the middle just so you can see. I'm going to very lightly create a grid. So we would keep getting the silver on our brush and going across. So we would go all the way across this way. And then we would go up and down also. And it's going to create like a grid. It's going to be very subtle. You know, that we're not making a solid, like don't press real hard and make a solid line. We want that blue to kind of show through. So that is this step. But like I said, I'm just going to pull this up. Because I did this step last night. Well, it keeps cycling. So I did this step last night just so it would be good and dry. So I did fix my my little stand for us to have a better viewing today. So then this is all dry. We would wait, you want to wait for that step to dry. Once it's dry, then we're ready to take our tracing paper and you're going to lay that on here. And then you lay this down like so. You want to make sure you're at the bottom of your page. And then we just take this pen and we're going to start tracing our Lady Liberty. Don't forget to put your tracing paper underneath. I have done that before, and then you get done and you remove your paper and you're like, oh shoot, you traced all of that stuff and then it's not even there. So we're just going to trace this her onto our paper. And then if you keep this and you want to paint it again, just use a different color of ink when you're tracing, and that way you can tell like where you've already traced and where you haven't. So I tend to use a blue or a black first, and then if I do it again, I'll use like a red or a green or something. Just that way you can tell where you've already traced and where you haven't. This is not an exact, like her, especially down here, this is like her dress, and all these wrinkles are like, they don't have to be perfect. They're very irregular. This is her hair, so again, it doesn't have to be perfect. painting her ear. We'll see how today goes. I think, if I remember correctly, this painting did take me a little bit of time. So just depending on what time it is as we go along, I may split this up into two lives. So I may come back on tomorrow and finish, just depending on what time it is. Late, you know, where I am in about an hour to an hour and a half. If I'm close to being done, I'll just finish. But if it's an hour and a half or so and I still have quite a bit to do, I'll break it up into 2 different ones, just because it gets to be kind of long for you guys. It gets to be long for the uploading the video. And you will be able to tell, like, I don't keep my lines perfect. I can fix that with the paintbrush later. We want to make all these little windows here. Also, while you're painting, even though you're going to be watching me paint in the video, have your reference postcard image in front of you, just so you have something to kind of look at as your finished image. It makes it a little easier, like, to see what's going on sometimes if you have something to kind of refer back to. I have my original painting sitting here in front of me, so... But you also have the instructions. In your instructions, it does say go over your tracing with the paint marker. I did not include the paint marker in this kit. I decided to hold off on that. So just trace it and don't worry about going over it with a paint marker, because I didn't include it. I included it in another box. So, okay. So I think I've gone over all of the lines. I try to make sure I haven't missed anything. So what I do is I kind of hold this in place with my fingers and I lift up the carbon paper, just kind of to make sure I've got all the important lines before I completely remove it, because if you completely remove it, it's hard to line this back up. So I've got her all traced on here, and if you don't let this dry, your tracing paper is going to stick to that metallic paint, which is why I did mine last night. It's going to stick to that metallic paint and not trace very well. Oh, I did miss a spot. I missed this. I can do this. So I missed going all the way across here on my, there we go. Okay, so now we just start to paint. This background is kind of the color of what she would be if we did her in true color. So that's why I chose this background. She's kind of a bluish green, you know, in real life, she's kind of a bluish green color. But I wanted to kind of switch it up a little bit. So we're going to start with the yellow light. And we're going to start painting her, the points of her crown. You will need a your smaller, like, detail brush for this. And you'll probably need to do 2 coats. So I'm just telling you that. So in the instructions, it says paint all of the areas you see yellow. So you're going to paint what you're seeing. So don't necessarily worry about painting exactly what I'm painting. You're just going to paint the areas that you see as yellow. So as you're looking at the reference image, that's what you're going to do. All the areas that you kind of feel should be yellow, that's the areas you're going to paint. This is not an exact science. This is, you know, and if you want more areas yellow, more areas orange, more areas red, that is completely your choice. So it doesn't have to be exactly like mine. It can be completely your vision of how you want it to be. like I said, I would keep that reference image in front of you just so you have something to refer back to even though you're watching me, because this is a little reversed for you. I think I need to, when I'm doing, like I'm doing the live kind of in selfie mode, because then I can see it if I look underneath my, but I think I'm going to turn it around into forward face or the back side of the camera. That way it won't be flipped for you guys. So I think the next live, I'll try and do that so it's not reversed. But this is definitely reversed, but I am using my original painting as my reference image. It's right here where I can see it. So that's what I'm referring to as I'm painting. That's my original painting. And I would encourage you to have that little postcard in front of you too, just so you have some sort of reference as you're painting. Oh, I forgot too, this little paper that's behind here, I put that behind there last night as I was painting just to keep the excess paint off of my next page. So I would keep that there too. Once it's dry, you can move it, but then if you're kind of going over like the edges, like in certain areas, you'll want to keep that there. But then after you're done next to the edges, you can take that out if it bugs you. I did forget to tell you that at the beginning. And you can totally leave the paintings in your pad. That way they're all together if you want. But if you want to take them out either before you paint or later on, that way you can take them out and frame them if you want. So like I said, this yellow, you're going to need 2 coats. So I'm just going back over the areas I've already painted and putting a second coat over that. Yellows are very, very transparent, even good, like the Yvette Saint Amant colors I have. She has a yellow that's called Mango, and even it, I still have to use 2 coats. It's just really hard to get a yellow opaque enough where it doesn't need 2 coats. And it does work best if you let each layer dry in between. Otherwise, you're just kind of moving around the wet paint. I wouldn't be too picky about staying in the lines around these crowns, because we're going to put like a shadow layer around that. Unless you don't want the shadow layer, you can totally leave that off. So if you leave that off, then yeah, you would want to be a little more careful around your lines, but I'm not being too careful. Like if I go outside the line, I'm not really stressing about it too much. So then the next place we have yellow is kind of along this side of her arm. That's the raised arm that's holding the torch. So I'm just going to come in with some yellow, and I'm just kind of starting at the edge and kind of feathering it in. And this goes all the way down to the bottom of the page, but it's just along this edge here. It kind of stops where this little crease is. Like it doesn't go past that crease. And then it comes down a little bit here. Across this bottom a little bit. And then it comes up along this crease here. Kind of fills this gap in between these creases. And then along this side here, and these colors, the way I got these colors is I put this photo into a program in my phone and used a filter, and that's how I got like all these colors. And so like where the colors are was completely dictated by that filter. So I didn't just randomly pick where I wanted these colors. It was chosen by the filter. And that comes down kind of where her shoulder dips down here. And then she has a little bit of yellow spots up here on her face that I'm just gonna quickly paint in. And these are completely random. Like the filter put them in, but I wouldn't stress about like where they exactly are on her face. I would just kind of paint them in wherever you want them, which is why I say where you see it. So, and now I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna paint the second coat of this yellow where her arm is. So even later on, if you're watching the replay to paint this or just to watch it the first time, which like I said, that's what I always recommend, just to watch it first and then go back and watch it to paint. And that way you can pause as you go along. Like if I get ahead of you, you can pause it until you get caught up, which is nice about having the videos. I have not downloaded the one that I did last week, the Americana birdhouses. It's still live in the group because it hasn't been 30 days. But I will upload that to my YouTube page and then post the link here in the group, just so once that video is deleted, you guys still have access to it. Because since Facebook kind of changed and deletes videos after 30 days, I don't want you guys to lose access to any of the paintings. So I will post the link to the YouTube video where you still will always have it. And I'll do the same with this one. I'll probably do them both at the same time. Like after I'm done with this one, I'll probably do that later today or tonight, just so I don't forget to do it and then all of a sudden they're gone. Okay. So I think we got all of the yellow spots now. Just check. Yeah. So I'm going to rinse that brush. Now we're going to go in with the pure orange. Again, all of these are colors that are in your first kit. So this is pure orange. That's the color we're going to use next. It is a little less translucent, but I think I still had to use 2 coats. We'll just see. So again, we're painting everywhere you see orange. So if it's not the same place that I paint, that's totally fine. You paint where you want the orange to be. When we have these overlapping colors, I kind of do what I call feathering my brush. So I just kind of stroke it and I kind of lift at the same time, and it kind of creates a feathering effect. So in these places that kind of the orange runs into the yellow, that's what I'm doing. Then we have this upper part of her ear. Right here is, this part is orange. And then there's some part of her hair here that's orange. This part of her hair here is orange. And then over here in her arm, some of where these creases start here, there's orange. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exactly where I put mine. Like I'm not even putting it in the exact same spot every time. I'm just kind of putting it where I probably will have to put a kind of a second coat of this orange, especially where it overlaps that yellow a little bit. And if you have questions when you come back and watch, make sure you just post it in the comments. I will see it later when you guys are watching. So even though if you're not watching it live right now, if you're watching the replay and you have questions, just go ahead and post it in the comments and I'll be able to see it later and I can answer it. That way maybe before you sit down to paint it, your questions will be answered. Like I said, I am kind of going over these areas that kind of overlap the yellow a little bit and making them a little brighter. And then pretty well, most of this area under her chin is orange. So we're gonna paint that whole area in. When you get to these bigger areas, you can switch to a bigger brush if you want. I'm just continuing with this small brush just because I already had my paint in it and I'm almost done, so. It is kind of harder to get a solid a solid coat using this little brush in big area, but I kind of put out a little, there's a little swatch of blue here, so I left that open, and then this part is a darker blue, so I'm not going to paint that. Then this line here kind of comes like that. I hope you guys end up liking this when you're all finished. I'm sure you probably thought initially it looked kind of difficult, but it's really not, especially since you have the tracer and the important, like the significant lines are on the tracer, so it makes it pretty easy. And then you're just, you know, really painting blocks of color, so it kind of makes it not too bad. It does, like I said, it takes a little bit of time to do. It's more of a time-consuming painting with all the different blocks of color, but otherwise, not too bad, really. Okay, so then above her, if you look on your reference image, above this seam here, there's a little patch of orange. So I'm going to paint that in. And then this crease here has some orange in it. Then as we move down, there's some orange down here. And again, this is kind of feathered up into the other colors, but it goes all the way over to where this crease starts. And it's just a real skinny layer of this orange. still haven't really chosen my second bonus painting of the month. I kind of can't decide. So I've been trying to figure out what I might do. It's not until next Tuesday, so I've got a little bit of time, but and then this little spot over here is orange. Her hair here is kind of got some stripes in it. It's kind of alternating the red and the orange. So I'm going to go ahead and paint some orange in there. I didn't draw in the stripes of her hair on your tracer. I feel like having the stripes pre-drawn kind of makes it a little more difficult to paint. So I didn't draw those in. That way you can kind of come in later and put the stripes wherever you want them versus having the lines dictate where you have to paint. So we are all done with the orange. I'm gonna rinse my brush out. I think I got all of the areas that were orange. Put this excess paint back in my bottle. And the next color, we are using Lipstick Red. So we're going to paint in all the areas that we see as red. We're still going to keep using this smaller brush, or I am at least, because most of the red is these little windows. So we're going to paint those in. And so I'm just going to keep using this little small brush. There is some red right here where this arm crease is. I'm going to put some right there. I try to go, and it looks backwards to you because it's flipped, but I'm right-handed, so I go left to right. That way if there's any wet paint, you know, it's drying as I'm going and not like I'm dragging my hand in it. So if you're left-handed, you would want to work right to left. That way the wet paint is always away from where you're going. So that is the way I do it. And that way it kind of keeps your hand out of your wet paint for the most part. Of course, if you've painted another color first and it's not quite dry, you might kind of get your hand in that. So that's when I kind of use my pinky and I kind of brace my hand up off of the paper. If I know I have some wet paint underneath where my hand would typically sit. I'm not really sure. We'll wait to see on the red as it dries. I don't know that you would need a second coat of the red. It might be bright enough without a second coat. I probably will not. Just to save some time and keep going, I probably will not do a second coat of the red. The yellow, of course, needed it. The orange needed it in a few spots, but the red, I'm just gonna, I think, keep going and not worry about having a second coat. But as it dries, when you're painting, if you feel you want a second coat, obviously you'll have plenty of time to pause and do that. So I feel like the red is pretty opaque, so. And in the next box, you start getting some of the Yvette Saint Amant paints, and I can't wait for you to see the big difference in the opacity of her paints. There's just a huge difference. I think you guys are really going to like them. And I'm working on a Christmas in July box, so that box is going to have her paints in it, so be looking for that. I'm also relaunching my group in July, the end of July, so I'm hoping to get some more new members in the group that can paint with us. So if you have a friend that you think might like doing this, invite them to like my page. That way they'll get the details and can see if they want to join. The other thing you can do too is, like, if you have a friend that you think might be interested, but they're kind of like, I don't know, you can always just log into the Facebook page and show them any of your workshop videos, or painting some of these paintings with me. They can watch just to kind of see if it's something they might be interested in. I also ordered the next one of my artwork stickers that goes in the next box, so I can't wait for you guys to see what sticker I chose for you. I'm not gonna show you this time. I'm trying to keep the next box more of a surprise than this box. Like I said, I wanted this box to be a surprise, but then I just couldn't contain my excitement. So, but the next box I won't reveal until after it's shipped to you guys, and I'll make sure you have your box before I do the live reveal on my Facebook page. But I think that you'll like what we'll be painting, and I think you'll like the goodies that are inside. Go ahead and paint like I said, the stripes here in her hair kind of alternated the orange and the red. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the red stripes while I'm over here. Okay, so where else are we seeing red? Okay, this shadow here along this side of her face is red. So I'm going to paint that in. It really kind of is fun to see, kind of as you paint the different colors, kind of see her features come to life. Because when it's a tracing and it's just lines, I mean, you can tell what it is, but painting in all the features and the shadows and all that really makes her be more realistic and really come to life. So that's always fun. Then her nose here is red. This is kind of the bottom side of her nose because the picture is kind of from below, obviously, so. And then part of this eyebrow here is a red. Well, it's not her brow, it's like her brow bone. And I think we got all of the red on her, looks like. Okay, I think we do. And as you can see, like I said, there's some just little spots I missed, but the red is pretty good coverage. So unless you just want a second coat, you probably wouldn't even need a second coat on the red. All right, we are ready to move on to the next color. I'll put the red back in my bottle here. All right. The next color is the cobalt blue, I believe. I think I meant, I have my little instructions out here. Let me just check real quick to see if I added, let's see. Oh, nope, it's the Calypso blue. So I'm gonna go back to that color. Didn't look like that color, but I forgot the first layer was a kind of a wash, so it made it look lighter. So we're going back to the Calypso blue, and we are gonna paint in parts of her crown up here. Oh, I'm going to switch to the cobalt because I think that Calypso blue is not dark enough for. So I'm using the cobalt instead of the Calypso blue because I just think that blue is going to show up a little better in where we're putting it. So change in the instruction sheet. I think it's going to pop a little better if I use this color first over the Calypso blue, since the Calypso blue is the background, even though we put the silver over top of it to kind of dilute it a little bit. I just think this blue color might look a little better. And then along here, and you know, as you're watching, if you think this Calypso blue is too dark in your opinion, you can definitely use the Calypso blue in yours. It's like I said, this is your painting. You can, mine is just a guide. My instructions are a guide. My live painting is just a guide. I want you to paint it however you want it painted. Then we have little parts of her hair that's darker here. And again, I'm just kind of feathering it up. We'll come in with the Calypso blue for some lighter blue tones, and we'll kind of feather that all in together. So, but like I said, there's kind of some shadow here, and that's what makes these darker blue colors. And then this part of her hair that's above her ear is this darker blue color. And then we have this pretty significant chunk of her eye is all this darker blue. And this, another part of her eye. It's not the whole. And we come back with some other highlights and accent colors that kind of define her eye a little better. And this upper lip here is blue. We have these darker blue parts under her chin. Will you bring my water in here? And there's a part of this over here that's blue. Thank you. Huh? No? Okay. And let's see. There's some significant shadows in her dress. I need to readjust my little painting keeps falling down. So we're gonna just paint this line just solid. Just the line. We're not painting anywhere other than the line. And then here, we're gonna paint this line all the way up. And we're going to fill in this crease right here with this dark blue. And then kind of make this line a little thicker as we go up. Okay. Then on this side of this crease, we're going to paint this. I am going to switch to a little bit bigger brush. That one's just not doing it for me. I'm just going to get this other little flat brush here. So we paint that line, and then we're going to kind of feather this shadow out here. So we're on the opposite side kind of the yellow that we painted down farther. So we're just tracing that line with our blue, and then kind of feathering it out away from the yellow, but into the rest of her dress. Like so. And we're going to do the same thing with this section here. So we're going to draw this line with our brush. And then actually going to draw this line too and paint this, because this is more of a defined where the shadow is. So I'm going to kind of draw this in. Then on this side of the yellow that's here, kind of a angled, kind of a lightning bolt type shadow. Like that. And then right here under the orange is kind of, this is where the crease of her arm is. So I'm just going to make a line right there. And there's blue right here. And then I think we have all of this darker blue in. Kind of going back over some of the lighter. So now we'll come in with the Calypso and kind of mix it in a little bit. Because there are some lighter areas of the blue. So we'll come in with this Calypso, and up here where this is I'm going to start at the yellow and I'm going to work kind of a stripe down into that blue color like that. Same with here. I'm going to start over here. Like that. And then her hair has, so we're going to start along the top. Oops, there's a little paint booger. We're going to start along this top side of her hair, and we're going to follow that line of her crown. And then we're going to kind of just feather it down a little bit. Not going all the way down, but just feather it towards her face. I'm going to have to turn my book just a little bit. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush again because there's some smaller areas. So along the top side of this, her eye onto her brow bone is some light blue. And it goes right underneath her eyebrow. And the same over here. It goes right above that red and right over to the side here. And this part of her lip is this lighter blue. I forgot a darker, the under part of her lip is a lighter blue too. Go ahead and paint in underside of her nose, this lighter blue color. This light blue that's over here extends all the way down along the side of her face. Over into her ear a little bit. And then there is some blues on her arm. then underneath here on her dress, there's some light blue, like some big chunks of light blue color. So we're gonna come in with this. I got my little bit of a bigger brush again. And these go all the way up to the darker areas of shadow. So on the one side, you want to make the line straight because there's a crease there. So we want this line to be straight. And then we're going to kind of feather into the darker blue on the other side. Same here, we want to make this line straight because there's a crease here. And then we want to feather the rest of this out into it goes all the way over to the darker blue, but if you want to leave a little bit of that showing through, you totally can. I think I'm going to on this one. And then here, there's some lighter blue. And then I'm going to paint this part of her arm, this lighter blue color. Okay, so we can do a couple of different things here. So in the instructions, it tells you to mix in some white with the blues and like color in more of her, like make her more lighter in certain places. But I kind of like this background color as the main color. So on this one, I'm gonna leave it with this showing through. If you want, you can go ahead and do like just according to the reference image and the instructions, you can totally paint in the more lighter white colors. But I kind of like the background showing through on this one, and I didn't before on the other one. So on this one, I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to show you how to make like the shadows around her crown and then defining some of these lines in her dress and her face that kind of make her defined a little better. And I think that you'll really like the way that this one turns out. But you can do it either way. Like, you can do it the way the instructions say, or you can do it this way. The nice thing about doing the rest of it first is then once you get this far, then you can kind of decide which way you like it. So for the shadow, I got a pretty significant amount of this violet pansy, and then I'm getting some of the cobalt, and I'm going to mix those two together to make a darker blue color. I am going to get a tiny bit of that blue just by itself because I did forget to paint below her lip here with the darker blue. So I do want to paint that in. So, I mean, I do want to show you that it's okay to like deviate from the original, like the original painting. So now I'm just going to mix this purple and blue right here. I'm going to kind of mix those together to make it a darker, like a darker blue color, more of a navy. Maybe. Okay. Okay, so we are going to start at the top. Oops, I kind of splashed my water on my lady here. All right, so we're going to use this dark blue, and we're going to start over here, and we're going to kind of trace along here. I might not have got it as dark as I wanted, but it'll be okay. So I'm just tracing along that line of her crown, and then I'm just kind of feathering it out to kind of make it more defined. I'm not going to go probably as wide as I did on the other one. But it just kind of outlines her a little bit, kind of makes her stand out from the page a little bit. And we're going to do that all the way around her crown. That also kind of helps cover up your tracing lines, because not all of them got covered up with the paint. Again, just trace along that line first, and then just kind of feather out with some more of your paint, and make it a little more defined. Because we don't want it to just be a solid line. We want to give it a little bit of interest. Does not have to be perfect or even all the way up and down. Just a little definition around her, kind of making her stand out a little more. The other option you could do is you could use your dark gray if you wanted, if you don't want to make this kind of bluish purple color. Just any color that's going to be dark enough to kind of make her stand out a little bit. Now, you can see on my original, I made bigger blocks of color, and the color was a little bit darker. I think I might have used a navy blue with that purple, and it made it more like a darker color, but you don't have navy blue in your kit, so I used the purple with the cobalt, which is still a really nice darker color that you can kind of help accent her a little bit. I think this darker purple looks really nice with these brighter colors that we've used. But like I said, you can use the gray if you want, if you want it to be a little more subtle and not purple. But I'm not making the block of color as wide as I did on my first one. So that's, again, another preference. That's why I want to show you kind of some different things as we paint, like that can just make it more your own. And then we'll use this same color just so it's consistent to kind of come into her face and make more of the details kind of stand out. So you would want to mix quite a bit of this darker color. You don't want to run out and then have to mix more, because it would be harder to get the same color. So make sure you mix plenty unless you're using like the gray by itself. When I'm all finished, I will post the finished paintings. I'll post them both, like even though you have the postcard with the reference image on it, I'll post the original one and this new one just so you can see the differences. And then you have until next Thursday to post your finished painting. And if you post your finished painting underneath mine, just like as a comment, so like you'll see my painting and then underneath mine, like you were going to comment on it, you post yours, your finished painting, and then we'll have a drawing, and just a random drawing, not whose is the best, just a random drawing. And you can win a prize just for completing the painting this month. I do, actually, to Lisa and Christina, I haven't forgotten about the prizes that you got in the workshop, so I need to get those sent out to you. I've kind of been lack on that, so I need to get those sent out. And actually, Christina, since you're a digital subscriber, I think I actually need your address. So if you wouldn't mind messaging that to me, I might already have it, but if you wouldn't mind messaging me what your address is, I will get yours sent out. And Lisa, I have yours because I already mailed you a box. So I'll get your spinny thing sent to you. Coming all the way down around her shoulder and doing these feathery shadows. And then she does have like a darker, this darker kind of behind is kind of darker. I'm going to paint that in really quick. And then this is all painted in. Another little gap right here that we're going to paint in. Okay, so that is all the shadow parts. I am going to get a smaller brush and we're going to come in and get some of these details on her face with the same color. So we're using the same color of paint that we have. And the first place we're going to start is up here, and then we're going to line in some of these creases along her arm, just so they're a little more defined. Just some really fine lines there. I come in. Ooh. I think I need a different brush. That one's kind of, the bristles aren't very straight. They're kind of crooked. So get this next one. All right, so we're going to paint in her eyebrows. This darker color. Oops, let's get. And you just kind of leave this like detail work to the end, just because that way if you have anything that you kind of want to cover up or a mistake that you have to fix, you can kind of do it with your detail brush. And there's a little crease for her eye there, a little eye here. Since I used that darker blue, it's a little harder to see. Then we're gonna kind of accent her hairline a little bit. we're going to add in these little stripes that are kind of creating the appearance of like her hair pieces. So they can be very irregular, very random, which again is why I didn't put them on the tracer. That way you can, it's much easier to just draw them in later. That way you don't have to try to cover up lines, or you can just kind of make them fit wherever they will. And we'll just keep going around to this side. Because you can make some of them, you know, a little wavy, a little curved, just to make it a little more realistic looking, not so statuesque. Kind of define her mouth a little better. Nose. And then we can come down here and kind of finish these lines. Okay. So like I said, it looks a little different because I didn't go in and paint, like mix the white with the Calypso blue and paint in these whiter shades. I left them the natural color that was the background. And then since I used a darker blue instead of the Calypso blue, it made some of it a little darker, and so her eyes are not as defined. But like I said, I'll post this on the page, and I will post both versions, and that way you can kind of choose how you want her to look. And then if you get her painted by next Thursday, then post your finished painting underneath mine, because I'll post both. And so here's the original again. Like I said, this one took me a really long time, so I think that I probably was a little more detailed in this one. And then this one, I used a little bit darker blue. I didn't mix in the white and paint in the background, and then I didn't have as dark of a blue around her crown as the shadow. So I hope you had fun. Read the instructions, follow along with me, and you will have your first painting all done. Bye.